lines of credit at anywhere from like 5 to 9 points over SOFR, which means that their real interest rates were as high as 15%. And the one thing that can turn a fragile lending portfolio into a full-blown crisis is a severe sustained inflationary shock where these numbers get even higher. So a major war in the Strait of Hormuz and an energy-driven supply shock building is exactly.
Did you catch that? 15% interest rates on real loans, real American businesses, before this war even started. And now, with oil flowing through the world's most dangerous choke point, those loans are about to get worse, much worse. What you just heard is not a theory. It is not partisan spin. It is financial data. And it is coming straight from the government's own reports and from Wall Street's biggest banks. Here is what this video is going to show you. The economy was already crumbling before the first bomb fell. The official government numbers prove it. The GDP numbers were just cut in half. The deficit is exploding. And BlackRock, one of the largest investment firms on earth, just blocked its own customers from taking their money out. This is not normal. None of this is normal. And by the time we are done today, you will know exactly what is happening, why it happened, and what this administration does not want you to connect. Stay with me.
The past year, but now it's in black and white with each new data release. So let's start with the revisions to GDP because they're brutal. The government just cut fourth quarter growth in half from 1.4 to 0.7%, which tells you how weak the underlying economy was even before the war in Iran. Now remember, we've already walked through how 2025 GDP was being propped up by a once-in-a-generation surge in data center and AI infrastructure spending, and how, in a prior Midas video, we showed that without that boom, the growth story basically fell apart. Analysts like Jason Furman and others have pointed out that almost all of the first half growth from 2025 was from data centers and information processing. If you strip that out, you're left with an economy that was basically flatlining. The administration tried to hang the already anemic Q4 numbers, though, on the government shutdown. But this 50% downward revision makes it clear that the weakness runs much, much deeper. And that's after counting hundreds.
Let me make sure that just landed. The government's own bureau, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, just confirmed that the economy grew at only 0.7% in the final quarter of 2025. That is not an opinion. That is not a talking head. That is the official United States government number. And it is half what they told us just weeks earlier. Here is what they are not telling you. The only reason growth looked even that decent through most of 2025 was because of one single thing: an unprecedented surge in AI and data center construction. Economists, including Jason Furman of Harvard, a former White House advisor, pointed out that if you strip out that one-time tech boom, the rest of the economy was basically flatline. This is important because it exposes the story they were selling you. They said the economy was booming. But what was actually booming was a one-time technology build-out. Everything else, consumer spending, manufacturing, small business, was quietly going in the wrong direction. And now that AI wave is slowing down. The shutdown excuse is gone. The tariff revenue they were counting on is now under legal attack in the courts. So the next time this administration tells you the economy is strong, ask them, strong compared to what? And strong for who? The next time they look at this chart, this comes directly from the official U.S. government data, the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The blue bar is what they told us. The red bar is what actually happened. Half the growth, gone. And the administration wants to blame a government shutdown? A shutdown that lasted a few weeks cannot account for a 50% revision in the entire quarter's economic output. The numbers do not lie, even when politicians do.
First Russian tank rolled across the border. This administration has done none of that. It picked a fight in the most sensitive energy choke point on the planet, as we said, with no discernible plan for energy security, no diplomatic runway, and no coordinated response with allies. People can't even believe that we did what we did. And that's not an accident. This is the Trump governing philosophy, to just go from crisis to crisis and then talk tough on Truth Social and TV and hope that the markets clean up the mess somehow. That's not going to happen. The Iranians are dug in and they have all the cards right now. And now he's jeopardizing.
Let that sink in, because that comparison is damning. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, the Biden team spent months preparing. They coordinated with international allies. They negotiated with oil producers. They drew down the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at precisely the right moment. The Treasury Department's own analysis showed that release lowered gas prices for American families by up to 42 cents per gallon. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not telling you the Biden administration was perfect on energy. They made mistakes too. But the undeniable point, is that they had a plan. They thought ahead. They tried to protect working people from the worst of the shock. This administration did none of that. Reuters confirmed this week that Trump started a war in the most strategically critical body of water on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz, through which more than 1/4 of all global seaborne oil trade passes. With zero alternative supply arranged, zero coordination with allies, and zero diplomatic off-ramp prepared. This is not incompetence by accident. This is what happens when you govern by impulse, by threat, and by truth social post. And right now, American families are going to pay the price at the pump, at the grocery store, and on their monthly bills. Look at this map. Every single one of those arrows flowing through that narrow passage, that is oil, natural gas, refined fuel, and chemical fertilizer. 1/4 of everything the world uses to run. CNBC reported this week that a closure of this choke point would be a tipping point for the entire global economy. Not just here, everywhere. This is not a local story. This is not a partisan story. This is a map of what your grocery bill looks like in 6 months if this war does not end. Here is the sequence of events, and I need you to memorize this, because this is your armor against the spin that is coming. First, the economy was already weakening before the war began. The official GDP numbers prove it. Fourth quarter 2025 growth, just 0.7%. Official government data. Second, the deficit was already exploding. The GAO confirmed the full fiscal year 2025 deficit hit $1.8 trillion. That is before any war spending. Third, private credit was already cracking. BlackRock, one of the biggest asset managers on the planet, just blocked customers from withdrawing their money from a $26 billion fund. Fitch Ratings confirmed that private credit defaults in the U.S. hit 9.2% in 2025. Fourth, consumer spending was already stalling. The Federal Reserve's own preferred inflation measure, core PCE, came in at 3.1% in January, still way above the 2% target, still hurting families. The war did not create these problems. It took problems that were already building and turned them into a full-blown national crisis. Here is my opinion, and I stand behind every word. This did not have to happen. The Strait of Hormuz is the most consequential energy choke point on Earth. Any responsible administration, with any serious economic team, would have thought through what starting a conflict there would mean for gas prices, for food prices, for small business loans, for your mortgage. They did not think it through, or they did not care. Either answer should outrage you, because you and I, and every working American, are the ones who will pay the bill. The good news? You now know the full picture. You know what numbers to watch, and you know what the spin will sound like before it even arrives. Knowledge is your protection. So share this video, use these sources, have these conversations. Democracy does not defend itself. People do.
This administration is going to try to sell you a story in the coming months. They'll say that GDP revisions were the result of that temporary shutdown, or that it's just statistical noise, or they'll tell you not even to believe their own numbers, that it's all fake news, even if they're the ones that are releasing the numbers. They'll say that the deficit spike was a wartime necessity, even though deficits were already running north of $1 trillion through February. And the tariff numbers that are in there are possibly not real. They'll praise their own toughness on energy, even as they preside over one of the most avoidable and damaging energy shocks in modern history. So your job and our job is to remember the sequencing of events. The economy was already slowing. The revisions were exposing how flimsy the growth story was. Consumer spending was already stalling, while core inflation remained stubborn. Private credit and housing were already cracking under the weight of higher rates. The deficit and debt trajectory were locking us into an era of fiscal dominance. The war didn't cause these problems. It turned them from challenges into a full-blown crisis. Now, in the days and weeks and months ahead, you're going to be bombarded with competing narratives and very selective statistics, not just from this administration, but also from the Israeli government, the Iranian governments, and from think tank experts, whose job it is to go on mainstream media and sell you this war. The safest move in wartime is to narrow your information diet. So look for outlets with people who have actually been on the ground. Read more than you watch. We're fully in the disinformation phase now. And the disinformationist in chief on our side happens to have the loudest microphone. What we can track together and what you can square with your own lived experience is what's happening to the economy in real time. The prices that you pay, the jobs you see available, the credit that's available or not in your community. Now, I'll keep cutting through the noise as best as I can, along with everyone here at Midas, to give you a straightforward read on what's actually happening and why. So make sure to connect with me on YouTube or Blue Sky at UNFTR and sign up for my free weekly newsletter at unftr.com. We're ramping up the coverage and analysis as fast as we possibly can to stay ahead of this thing. And remember, resources for everything that we cover are in the notes below. For the Midas Touch Network, I'm Max from UNFTR. Thanks as always to the Midas Mighty for having me here, and I'll catch you next time.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MidasPlus.com.
Here is the sequence of events, and I need you to memorize this because this is your armor against the spin that is coming. First, the economy was already weakening before the war began. The official GDP numbers prove it. Fourth quarter 2025 growth, just 0.7%. Official government data. Second, the deficit was already exploding. The GAO confirmed the full fiscal year 2025 deficit hit $1.8 trillion. That is before any war spending. Third, private credit was already cracking. BlackRock, one of the biggest asset managers on the planet, just blocked customers from withdrawing their money from a $26 billion fund. Fitch Ratings confirmed that private credit defaults in the U.S. hit 9.2% in 2025. Fourth, consumer spending was already stalling. The Federal Reserve's own preferred inflation measure, core PCE, came in at 3.1% in January, still way above the 2% target, still hurting families. The war did not create these problems. It took problems that were already building and turned them into a full-blown national crisis. Here is my opinion, and I stand behind every word. This did not have to happen. The Strait of Hormuz is the most consequential energy choke point on Earth. Any responsible administration, with any serious economic team, would have thought through what starting a conflict there would mean for gas prices, for food prices, for small business loans, for your mortgage. They did not think it through, or they did not care. Either answer should outrage you, because you and I, and every working American, are the ones who will pay the bill. The good news? You now know the full picture. You know what numbers to watch, and you know what the spin will sound like before it even arrives. Knowledge is your protection. So share this video, use these sources, have these conversations. Democracy does not defend itself. People do.